So to finalize on list, we are going to learn about lists and methods. So back into our numbers list. So maybe you have 2, 4. We have that maybe that list of numbers. So let's put here 2. Then let's call these numbers. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we can modify the we can actually perform some modifications like adding, removing, ordering this list. So the first thing we want to do is actually we want to append. So the first thing is append allows us to add numbers. So let's say now numbers dot append. So let's say 100. So let's see what this will actually give us. So if you now run this, let's see what will be actually. So it's printing none because we're actually printing on the same format. So I'm just going to do this way to undo that. So then we're going to print this in a new line. So print numbers. If you now run your program, you find that 100 has been added. So actually, for the first method we have actually seen is the append. So what append does is it adds the specified element at the last part of the list. So the next one we want to do is we want to look at is insert. So let's say insert. Now let's run this one and see what will happen. Wow, we have a big error here. So dot insert actually expected 2 arguments but only got 1. So this is actually different from the append. So inserting takes 2 actually arguments. So the first one is the index or the position where you actually want to place your number or your element. So let's say you want to place it in our second index. So that's index number 2. So that's 0, 1, 2. So we want to replace this number 4. So if you now print our numbers, you find that it's now 2, 3, and then 100. So what actually insert does is it takes in the argument you want, the argument or the index you want to place in actually plus the element you want to actually place in. So the next one is we want to maybe remove an element. So let's say we want to remove because 100 is not here. So let's say we have remove. So we want to remove our first element. So 2. So the next one we've actually seen is the insert. Then we are now trying to look at what remove does. So what remove does is actually it removes that element. So if you now run this, you find now it's 3, 4, 5, and 6. So what happens if we try to remove an element that's not there, like 100? As usual, we expect an error. So this actually returns a value error. So that means that the value we are trying to remove is not in our list. So one more powerful thing we want to look at is the clear. So what this clear does is it actually from your guess, it clears everything, it removes everything. So let's say clear. So if we now run this, boom, we now have an empty list. So what clear does is it removes all the elements. So that's one thing powerful about the clear method. So the next thing we want to look at is the pop method. So what pop does is it's just like popping, you just removing. So we're gonna say pop. So if you now say pop, it will remove the last index. So that is, we expect 2 to be removed and L at 56. So that's 56. So if you now run that, then boom. Oh, sorry, I'm used to saying boom, boom, boom. So it's actually, don't mind that. So you can actually see that now we have 56 and number 2 has already been removed. So the next thing we want to actually check is the index. So maybe we have repeated values. So maybe like you do have another 2 here. So one powerful method to actually check for the first occurrence of an element is the index method. So let's say we have index, then index of number 2. So to actually check for the first occurrence of an element is actually one of the most critical part, especially when it comes to debugging systems. So you want to know when exactly that error occurred the first. Then you can use the indexing in Python. So when you want to write your automation script. So what this does is it returns the first occurrence of an element. So if you now run that, then we now find that we have 2. So we have 2 2 here, then we have this other 2. So how actually does this method help us? So if you now print directly to this, then we can have the index number of 2. So we can say maybe like, let's add more repeated values, so maybe like 40, and then also have 40 over here. Then we add that. So if you now run the program, so let's say numbers dot the index of 2. So if you now run this, you find that 40 has actually been printed, so you're just going to remove that. So to access the first index, so for 2 we have index 0. So what happens for the index of maybe 40? Let's run that. So you found that it's first occurring in actually the second index, so that's 0, 1, 2. So it's occurring for the first time at index number 2. So the next thing we want to do actually is we want to count. So let's say you want to count for this number of occurrences. So let's say we want to count 40. How many times has 40 actually been repeated in our list? You find that it's actually been repeated twice. So you use the count to help you check how many times actually an element has been repeated. So let's say we now have 2. Let's check for the number of counts for 2. You find that 2 has been repeated for the first time, second time, and the third time. So let's see how possible is it without you getting tired. You want to sort this number to arrange them in ascending and descending order. So let's say you've been given a task to do that. So Python comes in with an inbuilt method called sort method. So then we also have actually the reverse method. So I'm going to explain this at the same time. So what sort method does is it actually orders, or it lists items from the smallest to the largest for cases of maybe integers. Then the reverse one will actually sort elements from actually the biggest to the largest. So to help action on that, so you're going to say numbers dot sort, then make sure that you have that. So then we're going to print numbers. Then we're also going to actually like call numbers dot reverse to see that these elements can also be arranged in descending order. So we're going to print this twice at the same time. So we're going to say print numbers. So I want us to actually do this, and then we can see the difference. So you find that the first one is sorting numbers from smallest to the largest, and then the other one, the reverse one, is actually sorting elements from the largest to the smallest. So one final thing to do is, so let's actually finalize on that. So one final thing to do is we can check if elements exist in actually an element. So we use the in method, in keyword, sorry. Then we can also make a copy of a list. So we can say we now have our second numbers list. So we're going to say we want to copy the first one. So we're going to say numbers dot copy. So we are trying to copy actually the first number list. So we are going to copy that. So we're going to assign this into our numbers. So numbers 2. So let's just call it numbers 2. Then we are going to say maybe like numbers 2 dot append. So let's add a new one to let's add 1,000 so that we can see the difference. Then let's print this. So print numbers 2. So let's run this. So if you run actually if okay, it's numbers 2 not numbers 1 here, sorry for that. So if you now run this, you find that 1,000 has been appended from actually this. Now from this you find that the first list is not affected by the new list. So different lists are actually independent, so they don't actually depend on each other. That's why when we modified the first one by appending 1,000 and then printed the second one, it was not affected. We can maybe again try to check if an element exists using actually the in. So we can say print 2 in numbers. So if we actually run this, we expect a certain value here. So we expect a boolean because we are using the in operator. So one more exercise before we finish on this. I want you to write a program that will now remove these duplicate elements. So we have 40 repeated here, and then we have 2 all over repeated. So write the code, then we'll meet in the solution.